So good afternoon, everyone. This is RCEA Board Clerk Lori Chiqueta with some housekeeping reminders. For those of you here at work in your building, the microphones are on throughout the meeting, so I ask you to please keep external conversation. Try to avoid that, please. And then when you're speaking, please remember to speak clearly, one person at a time. If you can, introduce yourself when you're speaking, so people who are online can follow what is being said. Online board members, Director Fuller, today that's you. Please keep your camera on throughout the meeting and unmute your microphone when you're speaking. For community members who plan to speak in the public comment periods, please come up to this podium if you are able and speak into the microphone so that it picks up your voice. Online participants, please click the raise hand button in the webinar controls. And if you're on the phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. And raise your hand early, please, so we don't miss you. Public comment may be limited to 3 minutes at the chair's discretion. Emailed public comments are being accepted at publiccomment@redwoodenergy.org until the chair closes the public comment period for your agenda item. Remote participants, if your meeting connection is disrupted, if you can, please try to notify us by calling or texting 707-613-0622, 707, oh, sorry, that's the wrong number on the screen, 613-0622, or email public comment at redwoodenergy.org. Chair Schaefer.
All right, we are going to call the September 26, 2024 meeting of the RCEA Board of Directors to order. May we have a roll call, and then we also have one remote director participation.
Correct. So Director Mike Wilson. Vice Chair Scott Bauer.
Here.
Director Skip Jorgensen.
Here.
Director Chris Mobley is absent. Director Frankie Myers is absent. Director Jason Ramos.
Here.
Director Lee Scafani. Here. Chair Sarah Schaefer.
Here.
Director Jack Tuttle is absent. Director Frank Wilson is absent. Director Michelle Fuller.
Here.
Director Fuller, you're participating today for just cause medical reasons. Is there anyone 18 years or older in the room with you?
No.
Okay, thank you. There's a quorum for regular and CC.
Thank you, Lori. That'll take us to our next item, which is reports from member entities. Do we have anybody on the board that would like to report anything from their jurisdictions? Not seeing anybody. We will move then to item 3, which is oral and written communications. This is a time for people to address the board on matters that are not on the agenda. The inclusion of oral communications, the board may respond to statements, and any requests that require board action will be set for a future agenda or referred to staff. Do we have anybody wanting to comment on items not on the agenda? Or if you are on Zoom, raise your hand now. Not seeing anybody in person. Is there anybody on Zoom? That's good. All right.
Chair, we did receive written comment from John and Katrina that's available at redwoodenergy.org.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then our next item is the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered routine and are enacted in one motion. There's no separate discussion of any of these items, and if discussion is required, that item can be removed from consent and considered separately. So we'll start item 4.1, approve the minutes of the August 22nd, 2024 board meeting. 4.2, approve disbursement report. 4.3, accept financial reports. 4.4, approve resolution 2024-10. Approving and attesting to the veracity of the 2023 power source disclosure report. Item 4.5, adopt resolution 2024-11, adopting a procurement policy, investment policy, and amending the financial management policy. Item 4.6, approve resolution 2024-12, approving the form of and authorizing the execution of the First Amendment to the Resource Adequacy Agreement with the Regents of the University of California. Item 4.7, approve resolution 2024-13, approving the form of and authorizing the execution of the Second Amendment to the North Coast Highway Solar 1 Power Purchase Agreement and the Second Amendment to the North Coast Highway Solar 2 Power Purchase Agreement, reducing delay damages rates for the feed-in tariff projects. Item 4.8, for the North Coast Plug-in Electric Vehicle Charging Network Phase 2 Construction Contract Award. And to one, determine that Hooven and Reese and ADC bids are responsive to IBF 24505, reject the bid protest submitted by ACGC on September 20th, 2024. And item 3 under that, award a contract for the installation of electric vehicle charging stations for the RCEA North Coast Plug-in Electric Vehicle Charging Network expansion project to Hooven and Reese in the amount of $142,414.30 for the McKinleyville and Arcata sites, and authorize the executive director to execute all applicable documents, subject to RCEA General Counsel review. Do we have any members of the board that would like to pull an item from consent? Not seeing. And is there any public comment on any items on consent calendar? Not seeing any in person, nobody on Zoom. All right, I will take it back to the board for a motion of approval for the consent calendar.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, we'll do a roll call vote because we have remote participation.
Thank you. So Director Michelson.
Yep.
Vice Chair Bauer,
Aye.
Director Jorgensen,
Aye.
Director Losi and Myers are absent. Director Ramos,
Aye.
Director Scafani,
Yes.
Chair Schaefer,
Yes.
and Director Miller.
Did you call me? Sorry, I.
And this motion passed. All right, thank you. Okay, so that we will now move into CCE business. There is no old business, and so that takes us to new CCE business item 7.1, which is the interconnection process enhancements request for information. And so we have Power Resources Director Richard Engel and our regulatory manager Paige Carlson to report.
I'm going to hand it off to Faith and Jocelyn to handle this one.
Perfect. Hello, Paige Carlson, regulatory manager.
Hello, Jocelyn Glenn, Senior Power Resource Manager. So we're going to be talking today about the recent interconnection process enhancements initiative at CAISO and a resulting RFI from RCEA. So just for some background, the California Independent System Operator is a nonprofit independent system operator and regional transmission organization. They manage the state's transmission grid operation and planning. They have an interconnection queue, which is basically a line or a wait of new energy projects waiting to connect to the grid. These projects are studied as a system in groups called clusters, generally on an annual basis. Previously, CAISO had very flexible requirements, the most flexible in the nation. And the benefit to this was we were able to have a more rapid renewable energy transition in California. But the negative is that developers noticed this and we started having an inundation of interconnection applications with 4 times as many in the past year compared to previous years. This actually led to the CAISO referring as the most recent clusters as a super cluster and unofficially as a super duper cluster. It is in some of their documentation. So under the direction of FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, they began the interconnection process enhancements initiative with the goal to accelerate interconnections by reducing the number of phantom projects in the queue. So those projects are energy resource projects that would have had to have been studied and would take up capacity in the queue, but might not ever lead to anything being developed. So the enhancements themselves affect the current queue cluster, which happens to be named cluster 15 and future clusters going forward. There's still some projects in cluster 14 that are waiting. Those ones are not ready for that. It's going to require that projects have site control to enter or stay in the queue. Previously, projects did not have to have site control. And projects will be studied based on the available transmission capacity close to the location of the project. And this is kind of what leads us to our RFI is they're introducing a scoring process that factors in commercial interest. And commercial interest, what that means is that entities like RCEA can give a score to projects that we're interested to encourage the CAISO to study those. That's gonna be approved by FERC, hopefully on October 1st of this year. Though we will need to issue an RFI before that in order to move forward with scoring. Developers do have some concerns that this might lead to some unfairness in the market. Entities like RCA and other load serving entities would be able to push projects through more quickly. So there's potential that that portion might be removed and we'll just see the other improvements, but we're hoping that we'll be able to get some commercial interest or something. Okay, that's one.
Thanks, Faith. So as Faith mentioned, pursuant to this new process that KISO is launching, we and other load serving entities are issuing solicitations to try to identify projects that we can express commercial interest in to KISO. So this RFI is our proposed way of doing that. We're proposing some minimum eligibility criteria that are kind of obvious. One is that projects must be requesting a connection in this current cluster. And they must have at least 90% site control. That's the standard that FERC set. So that means that the project must have 90%, at least 90% of its footprint under a lease agreement or ownership or some other form of site control. And then lastly, as with all our CEA power solicitations, we're requiring the projects be either renewable, carbon-free, or energy storage resources. And then we do express preferential criteria in our solicitations. These are not required for projects to submit responses, but those criteria are that the project is located in Humboldt or surrounding counties. And then the project is sized appropriately to our CEA's, electricity needs. And then lastly, that the project can, we have a preference for projects that can deliver resource adequacy. This does require the project to request that it be studied for deliverability in the interconnection process. So we are accepting the non-RA projects as well for evaluation, but we really prefer those RA resources. So as with all of our solicitations, we are any successful projects that coming out of the evaluation process, we request that or we require really them to sign an exclusivity agreement with us and to post a small deposit. And that gives our CEA the exclusive right to negotiate a purchase contract for the project. And it precludes that project from going and marketing, being marketed to other buyers. So steps 1 and 2 on this slide are standard protocol for our solicitations. Where this RFI differs is steps 3 through 6. So after signing the exclusivity agreement, we would then award that project what we're calling commercial interest capacity. It's kind of the points, the commercial interest points that Faith was talking about. We expect that KISO is scheduling that for December. So that's the time frame there. And then over the next few years, KISO will be conducting these interconnection studies. It's a longer process. It used to be an annual process, but the cycle is going to be more like on a 2-year basis now. And they'll issue interconnection study reports to each project with interconnection costs in there. So once the project has its interconnection costs, then it should be ready to submit binding pricing to our CEA, and we're proposing that we would then issue a subsequent RFO, and we would evaluate that pricing alongside of other offers submitted in that subsequent solicitation. At that point, and we do expect that to happen sometime in probably mid to late 2025, but potentially as far out as 2026. We're still kind of figuring out relative to KISO's new process when that best point is for projects to have that price certainty. But then, once we have that subsequent RFO going, we can shortlist the project according to our normal shortlisting practices, or we can reject it. And then at that point, we would no longer have exclusivity. So terms under which the deposit would be returned to the respondent. I'm not gonna read all of these, but the common thread among all of these terms is that if the respondent follows all the rules according to CAISO's process, according to RCEA's process, if they're acting in good faith, if they're negotiating in good faith, they're gonna get their money back if, we don't eventually procure their project. And then on the flip side of that, if they're not acting in good faith or they don't comply with the process, either CAISO's process or RCEA's process, then they would forfeit their deposit to us. So these are some of these are, standard in our exclusivity agreement. And then some of these we added specifically, specific to this particular RFI. Then, so evaluation criteria, just wanted to highlight a slight difference here. These are largely our normal, power solicitation evaluation criteria that we use. But for the first two criteria, the development risk and pricing, they're usually weighted the same, 30 points each out of 100, but we are proposing to weight development risk a little higher in this one, because we acknowledge that the pricing that we're going to be getting from projects is going to be indicative. It's not going to be based on actual interconnection costs, and those costs can change a lot over the study process. So that's why we're sort of changing these a little bit for this RFI. So as Faith mentioned, we do anticipate FERC to either approve or reject CAISO's proposal for their interconnection process reforms on October 1st. And I think just a clarification, she mentioned we have to have this issued before then. I think we just have to have our materials posted to our website by October 1st. And then we're actually planning to, launch it officially the day after October 1st, so the 2nd, because if FERC, there has been, as Faith mentioned, there has been some pushback from developers on this particular component of the CAISO proposal. And so if FERC does reject, the involvement of load serving entities in the scoring process, then we wouldn't issue the RFI because there wouldn't be a point, given the narrow scope. And then we have some documents just to highlight that we're going to be issuing some forms that haven't been provided to the board for review because they don't contain any terms and conditions of the RFI. They're just forms that respondents fill out. I think that is it. Slides.
Thank you. Do we have any technical questions, clarifying questions from the board?
Yeah, I'd be fine. What do you think? We talked about interconnection issues here, transmission issues. If we got a bunch of projects, do we have the ability to bring them online? If we don't have the connections. I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's a big thing I think about all the time is, do we have the capacity to bring all these projects online?
For local
Local.
resources, most of the grid infrastructure in Humboldt County is actually at the distribution voltage level, so it wouldn't actually be affected by this. So if a project is connecting at a distribution level, it's interconnecting through PG&E, not through CAISO. So yeah, that is, it is a little weird because we do express a preference for Humboldt County projects, but there's very few places in Humboldt County where you would actually connect to, the transmission grid that CAISO controls.
I want to add to that too. CAISO is only letting projects enter the queue under this new proposal up to 150% of the available transmission at that point of connection. So the project basically would fall out of the queue if there wasn't any transmission capacity already.
That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Okay, any other questions? Will we open it up for public comment? All right, not seeing anybody. Is there anybody in the public that wants to comment on this item? Anybody on Zoom? All right, I will bring it back to the board to, have a motion. Second. Authorize this.
I'll make a motion to authorize issuance of a request for information for ISO Q cluster 15 resources in accordance with the terms and conditions of the attached RFI protocol and commercial interest exclusivity agreement.
All right.
Well, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and we'll do a roll call vote. Lori, talk over here.
Director Mike Wilson.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Bauer,
Yes.
Director Jorgensen,
Yes.
Director Rosie is absent, Director Frank, Myers is absent, Director Ramos is not voting, Director Stefani,
Yes.
Chair Schaefer,
Yes.
and Director Toto and Wilson are absent, and Director Fuller is not voting. Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, that'll take us to item 7.2, which is statewide allocation of carbon-free attributes from Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant. We have James and Richard to report.
Dave Carlson again.
Richard Engel, Director of Power Resources.
So we're gonna be discussing the Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant allocation. All right, so just for some background before we get into the allocation, the Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant was opened in 1885 and provides 10% of the energy in the California grid, so it's a pretty substantial reliability resource. The plant is scheduled for retirement. Originally, the retirement date was set for 2025, according to a 2016 PG&E application. And the CPUC in September of 2020 approved this application for the retirement of Diablo Canyon with a 2025 effective date. And they also at that time ordered the construction of replacement resources by load-serving entities in the state. Shortly before the date of the approval of that decision in August of 2020, there was a pretty major heat wave in the state that led to some load spikes due to increased cooling. And the state ended up having to make the difficult decision to issue rolling outages due to insufficient reliability resources or resource adequacy. In September of 2022, there was another heat wave, and though there was not a need for rolling outages at that time, the legislature felt concerned that there might be a need for that in the future, especially with Diablo Canyon replacement resources not yet online. So they made the decision to extend Diablo Canyon operations. So they passed SB 846, which effectively invalidates the CPUC's approval to retire the plant and requires PG&E and state agencies to take all actions necessary and prudent to extend Diablo Canyon power plant operations. As a result, CPUC issued a decision in December of 2023, which extended the operation of Diablo Canyon's 2 generating units through 2030. One of the units is extended through October 31st of 2029, and the other is October 31st of 2030. So the allocation. So as it stands right now, there's 2 allocations that are available for the previous Diablo Canyon operations as well as the extended operations. There's the resource adequacy allocation, and then there's the clean energy attributes. These are 2 separate units. All of the LSCs, most of the LSCs in California, at least those that are under CPUC jurisdiction, automatically receive an allocation of the reliability benefits of Diablo Canyon. So that's something that is put into everyone's portfolio for resource adequacy automatically. There is an optional second allocation for the clean energy attributes, and that kind of goes towards renewable portfolio standard requirements, or RPS. So the extended operations allocation, those quantities aren't yet decided. Those resource adequacy quantities will be divvied out to everybody automatically. And then we'll have an option once the quantities are announced, 30 days from that point, to accept or reject the clean energy attribute. So that's coming really soon, which is why we're having this conversation now. And if accepted, the power from the clean energy attribute will be shown in our power content label.
And just for transparency, this is something that all California ratepayers already paid for. So this is something that they're paying for both the resource adequacy and along with that product comes that attribute. All right. I'm going to repeat myself a couple times here, just because I want to be really clear with the point. So accepting the allocation would result in us receiving the clean energy benefit that customers are already paying for. The state of California does have a law where no new nuclear can be constructed. So this would not result in any new nuclear power generation or development. It's just writing out the contract through the end of the application. And again, it would show on the power content label, which customers receive annually. If we reject the allocation, customers do not receive the clean energy benefit that they're paying for. And that is, it's referred to as clean energy by the state. It's just for clarity there as well. Same thing, no new nuclear power development. And we would continue to retain those RA benefits without disclosure on our power content label. So I want to kind of call out the power content label a little bit. If some of the critics of both scenarios, if it's shown on power content labels and enough entities in the state of California do accept the allocation, there's a chance that that'll show to legislation that there's an appetite for nuclear power in the state. And on the opposite scenario, if it is rejected and it's not shown on the label, there are concerns that that isn't very transparent to consumers because we are receiving that RA allocation and we wouldn't be showing it on our label. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Richard so he can talk about why we're bringing this to you all now.
Thank you, Faith. If you're familiar with our energy risk management policy, it does have language in it, which I'll actually show you in a minute, that prohibits procuring nuclear power, although there's a little bit of a caveat on that we'll look at. And that dates back to 2016 before we launched our CCA program. So in alignment with that risk policy, what we've been doing until now when we've had these offers of these allocations is we've been rejecting the nuclear allocations, but accepting the large hydropower ones that we get alongside those from PG&E. The large hydropower ones are not inconsistent with our procurement policy. So we've been fine with that. And there's some cost savings that go with that, as opposed to getting those resources from other sources we have to pay for. So this is new now because this allocation has to do with that extension that begins next year of what otherwise would have been Diablo Canyon's retirement. So from 2025 out to 2030, there's this new opportunity to get this nuclear allocation if we so choose. And you know, another driver for bringing this before you and not just making a staff decision to take a pass on it is the costs of procuring carbon-free sources, you know, other resources has just really gone up, whether it's from large hydropower or renewable resources. So we just really feel that it's, you know, out of fiscal responsibility, we should be bringing this to the board for consideration rather than just looking at our procurement policy saying no news, end of story. Oops. Backwards instead of forwards. So this is the language that's in the energy risk management policy. So it says, in keeping with community values, we don't take nuclear. It does say, however, exceptions to this prohibition may be needed for occasional short-term transactions, such as procurement of replacement RA. So staff did consult with our general counsel, who was okay with staff, you know, deeming this a short-term transaction if we're only asking the board to look at this for a year. That's how we framed it in the decision we're asking you to make is rather than having to go and actually amend our risk policy to be able to say yes to this allocation, if we're only asking you to do it for 1 year at a time, that seems consistent with this language here. I wanted to give you a little bit of numbers on what it means to reject or accept the allocation. So first of all, there's a yes and no choice of whether to take the allocation. And we presented this in the staff report as 3 numbered scenarios. I'm using those same numbers here. If you say no to the allocation, there's no change to our power portfolio, no change to our finances from, you know, what you've been seeing, including the risk presentation that you had from Jacqueline Hall last month. The most recent numbers we've gotten from the Energy Authority on their latest update of our financial report before our financial model before preparing the staff report was that with business as usual, we're looking at having negative net revenues of $9.4 million for 2025. And our greenhouse gas emissions of our portfolio without the nuclear would be 308 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour. Now, if you were to say yes, there's two different ways that we could proceed. And we're also looking beyond just a yes, no answer from the board. We're looking for your guidance of which of these would be your preferred pathway in the event that you say yes to the allocation. Scenario 2 is where we're using the allocation as a financial instrument to reduce costs. So our GHGs, our greenhouse gas emissions would remain unchanged. And the way that we would do that is just by selling off an equivalent amount of large hydropower carbon-free resources to the allocation that we take. So it's neutral on emissions, and the revenues that we would expect to get from reselling that hydro would improve our financial position by about $500,000 in 2025. And the GHGs would stay the same as in scenario 1. Alternatively, scenario 3, we would use the allocation as additional GHG resources above what we're already procuring. So in this case, our costs wouldn't change. We'd still have that negative $9.4 million net revenues for the year, but we'd have a lower GHG emission profile of 285 pounds. So it's a modest savings, either of money or modest savings for GHG emissions. The numbers are pretty modest because the allocation based on the latest information we have would only make up about 2% of our 2025 portfolio. We cited a higher number last month. I think it was like 6.6%. One thing I didn't realize when we were giving you numbers last month was that we're not going to get a full year of allocation in 2025 for the nuclear. One of the two generating units we get a full year's worth. The other one we wouldn't start getting the allocation until September because of an extended maintenance outage on that unit that's planned. So these numbers, if you were to look forward to future years after 2025, and we're considering this again, those numbers would look larger because those would be full year allocations presumably in following years, unless there's more plans for extended maintenance outages or something, which we don't know about at this point. So anyway, 2% rather than the bigger number that we talked about last time. How would a nuclear allocation change our label that we send out to our customers in 2026? So we send these out retrospectively the following year for a given year's power makeup once all the numbers are settled. So these two columns here show without and with the nuclear. And since we're just making this one adjustment of nuclear, and it would replace what we term unspecified power. We'd be getting just 2% of nuclear as opposed to 0%, and our unspecified power purchases that we could otherwise forego would take that number down by a comparable couple of percent. These numbers, just pointing out, these are all very speculative and preliminary because we don't really know what our 2025 procurement will consist of yet. This is a projection. And one other thing I wanted to mention is some other CCAs have already made decisions on this. So two that we know of that have decided to accept the allocation are Ava Community Energy that serves the East Bay, Alameda County, and some neighboring communities has decided to accept this. And MCE, which serves Marin County and parts of Napa, Solano, and Contra Costa counties, is also accepting this. So we've spent some time, looking at their staff reports and their cases they've made to their boards and community advisory committees. And that Sonoma Clean Power is also considering this and took it up with their community advisory committee last week. So everybody's trying to make up their minds since this the final allocation numbers are expected any minute from the CQC. Just a couple of additional things to mention. The savings, like I said, about $500,000, which is about a 5.4% reduction in our anticipated net losses for the year in 2025. If we use this as an instrument for reducing our emissions, it's about a 7.5% reduction in emissions next year. If we were to accept this, it would only appear on our standard repower portfolio. The Repower Plus, opt-out 100% renewable would remain 100% renewable, so that would be unaffected by this. Our plan, unless corrected otherwise by the board, is to take this up annually with you for the duration of the time that these allocations are available.
And I just wanted to add one more item. So depending on the direction of the guidance that the board gives us, I will bring corresponding amendments to our policy platform related to nuclear advocacy. So just consideration of your guidance for that as well would be appreciated.
I will open it up for questions. Or before public comment and more discussion. Do you have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Question, and I'm going for Richard, or either of you, what was the definition of carbon free?
Yeah, so it kind of helps to start with what's the definition of RPS or renewable portfolio standard, because those are the resources like solar and wind and small hydro, which are just included in the renewable portfolio standard by state policy in California. So those are the things that when we're talking to you about the category 1 and 2 and 3 renewables, those are those things, and we have to procure set amounts of those for state policy. Carbon free is another category, so it means things that do not count, that do not meet the definition of renewable, but are still free of greenhouse gas emissions. So basically the two things that are normally considered carbon free but not RPS resources would be large hydropower and nuclear.
So, is it discounted? You know, the production of fuel, what we have to do to store it, is that discounted? Because I mean, that's essentially not a carbon. It's not a carbon-free source. From my thought of the production of the fuel. Right. It's just simply kind of like, well, that's not included.
Yeah, and that is not addressed. So they really just look at, you know, is there a smokestack at the plant? Okay. And if there's not, then it's being carbon free. But I mean, we just looked last week, you know, the County Planning Commission just gave the unanimous approval to the Foster Avenue solar project. Yay. So that's moving forward, and they actually included in the analyses that were done for that project an emissions analysis that acknowledged that, you know, even solar projects entail emissions, at least during the construction. They didn't go all the way back and look at the whole supply chain and stuff. But they looked at emissions here in Humboldt County for building the solar project, and looked at how many truck trips it would take and everything to build the project, and then they compared that against emissions from a natural gas plant. So if you really take a deep dive, certainly you could, you know, I'm sure this has been done. I haven't looked at it, but somebody has probably looked at what are the incidental carbon emissions that go with running the Diablo Canyon plant. But for purposes of our procurement and what gets counted as our greenhouse gas emissions in our annual power content, those things don't show up.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah. What was the full duration of the current for Diablo? What was the allocation for given in terms of the amount of time they could stay open beyond 2025?
Yeah,
why we even have this card?
Yeah, it's through October of 2029 for one of the units and October of 2030 for the other unit.
Okay. And so in terms of the policy for RCA, in terms of like the temporary, we were calling this is, you know, if you choose one direction, this is like a temporary allowance, I guess, for that. And within our policy, is there a threshold for what is temporary? So is the 6 months temporary, or is 3 years temporary? Like, where do we draw that line in terms of what we understand is temporary? Because if we choose, say the board chooses like, oh, we'll just go till the end, and then that's our policy because it's because we know it's running out. Would that also become temporary?
I would think that's at the board's discretion.
It's not defined, and you know, might be something we want to define based on that comment, how the discretion of what is short term.
Okay.
As
Did
for
you-
the length of the allocation, it's on an annual basis.
Okay, well, and kind of following up on that, we've got two CCAs or CCEs that made this a decision based on this. And we know, are their decisions temporary by our standards, or temporary, like they're 6-month decisions, or are they saying we're just gonna go to the end and let it ride?
I don't have that information off the top of my head.
They accepted the allocation until like in.
Okay.
And Sonoma is requesting to accept it till the end as well, for the full period of time.
Yeah, I went down to Sacramento for a CCA planning session last week, and there was a lot of discussion in the room with all of the CCAs are basically bringing it forward before their board. So even those that have not yet had the conversation are going to be having it soon.
And then do the other CCAs, because I mean, a lot of this is in context because of the messaging around whether you receive or don't receive and how it's controlled. So do the other CCAs have similar anti-nuclear policies that you do? And are they having that conversation within that policy?
I'm aware of this one CCA that doesn't have anything in their policy.
Okay, and have they, is it one that has made this yet?
I don't know if they've made their choice yet. I know they're discussing it. Okay, yeah, this is kind of unfolding in real time. We haven't been closing order.
And, I wouldn't, at this time, I wouldn't feel comfortable requesting the board make that decision for the period of time that it's available. Because we're coming to you kind of last minute. And, because of the timing of our meetings, we didn't get a chance to go to our community advisory committee ahead of time. And so I want to make sure if we make a decision that's beyond a year, that we, have enough, public input time for that decision, because we recognize that, Humboldt County might be a little different situated since we had a nuclear facility here and the impacts of storing the waste that's generated.
We did reach out to all the groups that we could think of that have an interest in nuclear power locally to just give them a heads up about this, and we didn't want them to feel blindsided by only seeing this a few days ahead of time before that was published. So starting about a month ago, we started putting word out that this was going to be coming. Doesn't look like there's a huge turnout, but some of the people that are here today might be here because of this year.
Great, I just wanted to get kind of a industry and regional context to how it's being defined.
And so just a question to just kind of probably reiterate what Faithful already said. She was gonna reiterate multiple times, but I wasn't at our last meeting. So I mean, just to wrap my head around it, like if we are already, our ratepayers are already paying for the RA, so we're basically subsidizing it already and we're receiving those electrons.
So, yeah, so there's like the actual electrons in our lines, and then there's RA, which is like a reliability product, which corresponds more closely to the electrons, but it's still a bit of an abstraction. And then you have your RPS renewable portfolio standard, which is what basically goes into the power content label. So what is publicized to folks is an abstraction of an abstraction in a way.
And so,
And those are three separate products.
yeah, and the intent then, I mean, of obviously, if we are receiving RA for that putting it in the power content label towards renewables or whatever, right, is making that more transparent because it's already being procured by our ratepayers.
Yeah. That argument has been made. There's also the argument in the other case where if enough entities in Colorado already put it on, then it might show that entities are interested in nuclear power. So besides the same point.
Other questions before we open it up to the public?
I was wondering, Richard, you mentioned, previously it was reported that this would be 67% of our power usage. Now it's down to 2. Can you share a little bit more about why that difference?
I think the main factor there is just that we didn't recognize that this was only going to be a partial year allocation. So we get one of the 2 units all the way from January.
Right.
And the other one doesn't come online until sometime in September. So that cuts it down
And so
considerably.
subsequent years then would be expected to be more in the 6% range.
Closer to that. I think it's, yeah. I mean, I just did a really rough back of the envelope of like the total amount in California that is going to be allocated and how much of that our load is just proportionally. It was like falling between 5 and 10%.
It should be approximately the same percentage of each entity's electric service corporation's load. So if we get 2%, then someone else will also get 2%, or if we get 2.5, then someone else will get 2.5 of theirs.
Okay, so it's not divvied up in actual usage and distribution way, it's like.
It's proportional.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was wondering, couple of questions really, if you could speak to, the difficulty difficulty or not difficulty that you had trying to procure, green power or low carbon power. That's number one. And number two, it's been a while. I missed the last meeting, but, how far out is the large solar project?
Yeah, so first of all, just on general procurement of renewables, green power, carbon-free power, it's not difficult per se to procure it. I mean, we can go out and buy it on short-term deals, pretty much on short notice when we need it, but it has just gotten really expensive. So that's part of what motivates us to want to talk to the board about this, because this is kind of a freebie that's being offered to us that offsets a little bit of that, you know, steadily increasing or unsteadily increasing expense we've seen for renewable and carbon-free power over time. So it's really more about how much it's costing than how hard it is to get. Where we have had some difficulty is in getting long-term projects built, especially local. You know, we've just we've seen, whether it's, the permit getting turned down for the Terrigen wind project, they negotiated a contract on at one point, or, developers pulling the plug on their projects because they had unexpected increases in PG&E interconnection costs. We've seen those kinds of things. Just last month we had to, bring to the board a couple of cancellations of projects. But there is good news. You asked about the Sand River Solar Project, and we're continuing to have frequent meetings with the team developing that project. We just had one a few days ago, and it's good news now. Basically, they're sticking to their plan to be online in the fourth quarter of this year, and it's just kind of down to very minor things that could move the schedule back and forth by a few days or a couple of weeks, rather than seeing months of additional delays. So. Also, we've been starting to make plans for ribbon cutting for that one. So feeling pretty good about that. And as I mentioned earlier, the Foster Solar projects that's just outside of Arcata got its approval by the planning commission. So that was moving forward. They've actually got perimeter fencing going up on the site there now.
Okay. Let's open it up to the public. Let's see if anybody is here that wants to speak on this item, and then we can come back for some more discussion. So if you are here, you will have 3 minutes to speak on this item. Please make your way to the podium. If you're on Zoom, raise your Zoom hand. 3 minutes starts. Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Kathleen Marshall, 45-year resident of Humboldt County, 35 years of those in Arcata, 32 years as a homeowner, and almost that long as having solar panels, and I have a zero net energy home in Arcata. A little history about Humboldt County and the Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant in the 70s and 80s. The Eight-Port Alliance was very active in Humboldt County and participated with legal action and protests directly at the Diablo Nuclear Power Plant site. I think it would be reprehensible of RCEA to accept nuclear power into the mix of quote unquote clean energy that we accept and that ratepayers, we pay for. Nuclear power, someone asked, I think it was Scott, whether nuclear power was actually carbon neutral. It is not carbon neutral to build a nuclear power plant. It is not carbon neutral to mine for uranium and whatever other horrible things they use. And it is not carbon neutral, certainly, to decommission a nuclear power plant, and the waste that it leaves behind is critically dangerous, particularly on fault lines. And Diablo Canyon rests on fault line, just like our nuclear power plant here rests on fault line. And though that nuclear waste may be buried, if there is a major earthquake in our Triple Junction zone or at the Diablo Canyon site, that's a disaster just waiting to happen. So I am asking all of you to please not opt for this option. It is not in keeping with your mission as it is now, and it makes you more like PG&E. And I buy my energy through you because you are not PG&E. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public?
Good afternoon. My name is Dave Ryan. I live in Arcata, and thank you all for your work and time you put in on this board. And I really appreciate what RCEA does. I think it operates with a lot of integrity. When I heard about this happening, people have discussed that this doesn't involve the creation of any new nuclear plants, and you might argue that this is nuclear power that's already going to be happening until 2030 anyways. I'm disappointed and disagree with Newsom's furtherance of the license continuing to be extended for Diablo Canyon. I was involved in the late 70s and the 80s protesting against San Onofre, Mount Diablo, or Diablo Canyon. And we would get together in groups and educate ourselves on nuclear power. And usually it was mostly the waste that was the biggie. If a nuclear power plant can operate without problems, it's pretty clean. It's pretty carbon free. But it's kind of like the way a car would operate if it's not running. There's nothing coming out of the tailpipe. So in a sense, calling it green is like trying to call a car green. Well, only until you start it up. The other thing about all the waste with nuclear power is I liken it to, I sent you an email this afternoon, so I don't want to repeat everything that was said in there. It's like flying an airplane that landing gear hasn't been invented yet for it. It's in the air and you're crossing your fingers that you're going to figure out a way to land. And that's what the waste is with nuclear power. We haven't figured out safe ways of what to do with it. It's a mess. It's a really messy form of energy. It seems like we've got a generation of knowledge about nuclear power and how it's been a bad idea and not a good idea that's going to waste. If we're now referring to it as clean energy, carbon-free energy, green energy, it's none of those things. If you believe that, I encourage you to go to your local library and check out a couple of books and learn about nuclear power and why we need to be done with it. And don't have your name on it. Don't make a decision today that endorses it in any way. Send a message that you're not going to be an agency to support this. So I would encourage you to do that. I would encourage more community solar panel projects. I'm not sure why the county and the cities aren't doing more of those. I know we have a great one up at the airport, but it supplies to a limited number of users. I love it that we have private entities coming on with great solar projects, but I think we need to take it on public projects. It's a good prohibition you have in there. Stick to it. You don't even do anything temporarily. I'm afraid you'd be doing it again down the road. So I encourage you to exercise some integrity that you've done and shown through your years of what RCEA does, and that I'm proud of being a member of. Don't take this decision on a positive today, but reject these allocations. Thank you.
Speaker, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alexander Brown. I'm a grad student at Cal Poly Humboldt. I'm here at the behest of Jen Marlowe, who's my advisor, and also the founder of the 44 Feet Project. And I don't want to reiterate what everyone said about the waste, but that's kind of the project that we've engaged with, is understanding the waste that Humboldt Bay stores at Boone Point and sort of the long-term ramifications of, what are we gonna do with that? Humboldt Bay has been recently identified as one of the most climate vulnerable sites for the waste. Jen and I have corroborated that with evidence of coastal erosion and sea level rise, and an analysis that the waste is vulnerable to earthquakes from the Cascades subduction zone and other smaller seismic fault lines that traverse the site. Despite this, I don't think as a nation we know what we're doing with it. This is not just a local problem, it's a much larger problem, but I'm trying to understand the nexus between if we procure energy from Diablo Canyon, sort of what benefits do we receive other than cost reduction, and then maybe a reduction in GHG emissions. Is there a nexus potentially between advancing political or legislative action to relocate waste from these, heightened risky sites? I had a kind of clarifying question, and I don't know if that's, involved in the comment period, but I was uncertain if, the RCEA does decide to receive this allocation, would payments to operate and eventually decommission that plant be borne by ratepayers here? Maybe we can talk about that in a second, I don't know. And I think that if that were the case, maybe my question to RCEA would be, are you open to advocating for increased investment, since we would be paying for it, or maybe not, in spent nuclear fuel siting and or removal prioritization efforts, sort of as that bridge between benefits that we receive, so we're not storing waste in this vulnerable site. Jen actually had a really good question as well. And then maybe we should just talk after this, I don't know. Does the cost of responsible long-term spent nuclear fuel management factor in to those cost savings that you were talking about? And if not, would you reconsider conducting an alternative cost benefit analysis that does include those long-term inevitable costs of responsible spent nuclear fuel management, not just here in Humboldt Bay, but also, what will inevitably be Diablo Canyon, which we will then have a vested interest in that because we are generating waste to receive those electrons. I'm neither a nuclear advocate or against it, but I think that's what I'd like to see. Thank you. Appreciate it.
On that question all right, are there any other members of the public waiting to comment here in person? Not seeing anybody else in person, we will go to Zoom. We're not going to go back and forth. So I don't know. Anybody on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have Michael Welch, and then after that we have David Weissman. Michael, you can unmute, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Oh, I hope you can hear me okay. Thanks for this opportunity. The official statement from one of my Humboldt County.
We cannot hear you very well at all.
I don't think I can fix that. All right. I don't know if you can hear this. I will email our statement to you. I know that email statements were supposed to be at the board today, but I'm going to go ahead and do that.
All right. Yeah, we really can't hear you, Michael.
Okay.
Startled.
Okay. Next up, we have David Weissman. David, you can unmute and you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Yes.
It's coming through. Okay, thank you. David Weissman of the Alliance for Nuclear Responsibility, 501c3 and 4 here in San Luis Obispo, and currently active interveners in the CPUC proceeding for the extension of Diablo Canyon that was referenced earlier. I'd just like to reiterate, I believe I sent an email to Mr. Engel that was going to be forwarded to the board as public input. It's in response to the North Coast Journal article regarding this subject. And in it, the line says, now guaranteed to remain online for another 5 years. The state is requiring PG&E to make allotments of its power available to community choice energy providers at no additional charge. Again, the power is being paid for through a line item on all California energy customer bills. As I pointed out to Mr. Engel in the letter, there is not going to be a line item for this charge on California energy bills. Indeed, the 3 investor-owned utilities, Southern California Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric, and PG&E, all requested that the PUC place a specific Diablo Canyon extension charge on the bills. The PUC ruled that it did not see any merit in doing so and believed nothing could be gained from the customers learning this. So it is not going to appear as a charge on the bills. You may list something on your power proportional power statement, but your electric bills will not have this line. Instead, it will be buried rather opaquely in the generic public purposes program, and that's over the objection of the 3 utilities. You may still weigh in your opinion on this one way or another with the Public Utilities Commission, as you are not interveners in this case. And the second item would be about the cost. And, the Diablo power is going to cost your customers. And you may look at the small amount or the amount you save and what costs are attributable to your particular share of it. But in general, in a price per megawatt shared statewide, we're looking at a price per megawatt of anywhere from $96 to $114 a megawatt hour. But more importantly to the CCAs, through the power charge indifferent adjustment, any above market costs for power generation are then placed on the backs of PG&E's captive customers and their CCAs. And in this case, for the years you've just mentioned, 2024 into 2025, by PG&E's own numbers in their testimony, the above market costs for Diablo Canyon will be $400 million. And those costs are going to be paid by their ratepayers and therefore passed on to your CCA customers. So Diablo Canyon is not going to turn out to be the cheap alternative to the power, and your customers will be paying for that.
Thank you, David. All right. We have other Zoom comments.
Michael Welch has raised his hand again. Would you like to?
Let's attempt one more time and see if we can hear him better.
Okay, Michael Welch, if you can hear us.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Better, yes, we can.
All right, I have a statement to read. Thanks for this opportunity. This is the official statement from Redwood Alliance, Humboldt County's Safe Energy Organization. We have been in operation since 1978 and are largely credited with instigating the permanent closure and dismantling of the Humboldt Bay Nuclear Power Plant. We have also started our communities and local governments' discussions of human-caused climate change and have promoted the use of safe, clean, renewable energy wherever practical. We encourage RCA's board to say no to energy from Diablo Canyon and to stick to its long-term policy of not using nuclear-made energy. Without exception, we have been hearing from our constituents that they oppose this move. Nuclear-made energy is neither clean nor green and produces significant amounts of the most long-lasting and dangerous waste known to humanity. Some of that waste is being stored right here in our community on a bluff above Humboldt Bay. Further, we believe that any statement of yes to nuclear energy only furthers the goals of the nuclear industry. Those goals including building more nuclear power plants and repowering or continuing the use of nuclear power plants like Diablo Canyon that are past their design life and often sited on dangerous or otherwise inappropriate places. We understand how attractive it is to get free and supposedly carbon-free energy, but to us that does not outweigh the signal that saying yes will send to the public and the nuclear industry. The nuclear industry is in reality a government welfare-supported industry which spends millions of dollars every year in an effort to make people believe that nuclear-made energy is clean, green, and cost-effective in order to receive public funding. And to a large degree, their public relations campaigns are working. It is practically impossible for grassroots organizations like ours to counter those well-funded efforts. We only have limited access to media and government decision makers, and we have only our voices. So it is important for those who feel nuclear power plants are not appropriate additions to our electrical energy mix to always say no when the question comes up. Any amount of saying yes to nuclear energy only bolsters the efforts of the nuclear industry. So again, we ask that the board deny adding nuclear-made energy to our community's energy mix. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, anybody else on Zoom?
That's all.
Okay.
Chair, there were several comments that were submitted in writing, all available at
Great, thank you. All right, so I'm going to close public comment and I'm going to bring it back to the board for further discussion. How are we feeling, folks? We have three scenarios in front of us. We have three possible options.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
You know, I think I made my feelings about nuclear power in the previous meetings. I want to thank the public for coming. We don't really get that much interaction, and it's because this is a serious issue. And so thank you. I was just looking up a little bit, my own sake of what the fuel, how long it sticks around at radioactive waste. And uranium-235 supposedly has a half-life of 700 million years, which is about 20 million generations of human beings. And plutonium-239 is 24,000 years, which luckily is only 800 generations, right? Is it worth changing our policy? And kind of, I think one of the reasons we were formed is to manage energy in a different way, you know? I don't see this. I understand, you know, costs. People are always looking at how to run efficiently, you know, our responsibility to the organization, but to the community, to the world, to our 800 generations at least. Our responsibility should be to not accept it. I just can't, in good faith, do that to my kids, 800 generations of kids, to continue to accept, to think of something that is supposedly carbon free, but it's not. We don't think we discount the future all the time in our decisions. I'm not doing that anymore. So that's my feeling. I'd love to hear from others about how they feel.
Thanks. Yeah, go ahead, Skip.
I have two questions. This is not easy. We had discussions about 4 or 5 months ago on our budget. And we had to cut programs at the time. Our concern was reserve. I know it's been a short time, but any crystal ball on the direction our reserves may be going in?
I anticipated that question, luckily. So I looked at the financial model we used when we had the discussion in May and compared it with the financial model from September 20th. That's the last one I had access to. So the numbers Richard provides are on calendar year because that we procure on a calendar year. So it's easier for me to just compare calendar year. What we were looking at in May, 2024 looks better now. but 2025 looks worse. And overall, when I look at the fiscal year budget looks slightly worse than what we had presented in May. But that's solely on our power procurement side and doesn't include external funding or all of our operational budget. It's the financial model that the Energy Authority puts in. So I'm using loose terms because we haven't run all the numbers with, you know, additional information that we have about external funding and our programs and things like that. So is that, yeah, it's, yeah, and we do plan on, you know, as we discussed when we made those tough decisions of doing a really in-depth mid-year analysis to bring back to the board. But there hasn't been a magic, you know, huge upswing in the positive that that we've seen so far.
And then, as people have said, this is a free, but it's against so many of our better judgments in the long term. In the short term, if we rejected this, who are we sending a message to?
I think, and I'll have Richard correct me if I misinterpret his comment from last meeting. I think the one fear staff doesn't have is if every single load serving entity accepts it, it's sending a message to the CPUC and the legislators that there's more of an appetite for it than there is. And so, you know, as we discussed at last meeting, one kind of counter to that, if we wanted to make sure we weren't sending that message, but we did accept allocation, we would want to work on drafting language in our policy platform that because right now we don't have advocacy platform when it comes to nuclear. We'd want to add that so that, you know, we were poised to make sure that our communities, you know, feelings on nuclear were being represented. If the legislator did take that as a signal that there's more demand for nuclear.
I'm concerned that at some point down the line, we will be considering an increase in rates that will make us less competitive. And the viability of RCEA in the long term with short-term decision is important to me.
I guess I have those concerns too. Thanks for sharing them. I do want to say we can bring the 2026 allocation back to the board next year. And we do have reserves. We haven't met our reserve goals. So I think we're not on the cliff yet. So I guess, you know, we are, and that's why we wanted to bring this to the board, because we do want to be fiscally conservative and responsible, and we don't want to pass without having the consideration. And so I guess, you know, we can revisit this discussion in a year if we're starting to continue to see those negative net projected income. If you decided not to take the allocation this year, we can come back. And we will be coming back to the board with, doing a cost of service model and what that will mean with our rates in comparison to CDU. So in the next year, we have a lot of things we'll be bringing back to the board and things to consider, and we can take this issue up again next year as well.
Well, I'll say that if our reserves were headed in the right direction, it would help me in the long term with this. But I would, at this point, given more discussion, favor of 1 year agreement and acceptance with my nose touch.
Yeah, I believe that was either something one of our staff members said, or it was in the North Coast Journal article, but it's kind of one of those, if you're gonna take it, you gotta plug your nose while you do it. Go ahead, Elise. Yeah.
So I think that last time we discussed this with a higher percentage, it was seeming more unavoidable than it might be now, because the lower percentage makes it not quite so critical. My question is, if we were to accept it and we are to realize something like a $500,000 savings, would it be more palatable if we were to dedicate that $500,000 to the development of local renewable energy? So that we know that this energy is being generated in a nuclear plant, whether we accept it or not. What can we do with that reality to make our overall picture going forward improve? And maybe we take that money that we can save by accepting that credit and put it towards renewable future energy in Humboldt County that's generated in Humboldt County, controlled by our CEA, and benefits our CEA customers for the next 20+ years. We can't stop the nuclear energy from being generated, but we can take that savings and we can do something that's really good for our community, our CEA, and our.
A couple things here. I mean, I think all the points that are being made by the community in relation to nuclear power and all its disadvantages and its horrific track record are all true. You can hold that idea and that's real. And then you can also hold the idea of like this institution has its interests and needs. And I'm hearing what's Skip is saying in terms of concerns around the viability, long-term viability of this place and its competitiveness with PG&E in the long run. And I just have to say I'm in an organization now, and I'm not just the county, but others where our decisions that we make, where we feel like we're safe with our reserves at one point are not so, if we could go back in time, we might make different decisions about that. So things can get pretty squirrely if you are meeting your reserve and your budgets. That's all very real. And that's actually not abstract. I think what is abstract, and was mentioned here, is the vibrating. We don't have a flow of electrons, but what vibrates the electrons. And as you look at these lights, most of this energy is from fracked natural gas. So as we talk about our allocations around these, our portfolio, it is really important that we're, investing our resources to actually have that generation be renewable. But the reality is, in our current context, not renewable. Fracked natural gas, where we're supplying most of our energy until we make some pretty dramatic changes. So, so what this to me then gets down to is like, this is really a messaging issue. This really is around, that's really all we're talking about is a message, because no matter what that choice is, externally, we're not in control of that. And by ourselves, if we're the only CCA that makes this choice to do this, then I'm not sure it's going to have much of an impact at all. It'll make us feel really much better, and that has value, and it might even add veracity to our advocacy, which we don't actually have a policy quite yet to do that advocacy or the resources to do that advocacy. I would say that if this, in my estimation, if this board decides to move forward with receiving this and taking and having that, you know, half a year of $500,000, I think that, you know, you had two choices on there that were there's a kind of a spectrum of options in there. One, you can be like, we'll take $100,000 dedicated directly to advocacy to close that plant down. Like, I mean, where are those resources that you know, if that's our real goal, that's what we want to do. Because if someone else takes that money and receives that, they're probably not going to spend it on that, right? So where could we direct that resource if that's the choice of this board? So we could ultimately that became more renewables, lower rates, and direct and funded advocacy for that position. So there are some options, I think, in that if we move in that direction. And I'll say as an alternate, I had talked to my standing in for Supervisor Arroyo, and she is she's definitely leaning in the receive the funds, and but that being said, she's not here for the entire discussion. So my heart is saying, well, just let's get rid of this whole thing. But there's some real impacts that we might have. And I realize this is only half a year, but it still drives a direction. So I was always asking about this policy thing, because with this coming up every year, I don't know if it's like that's a great way to do this on an annual basis. 1 year you're going to choose to accept it, 1 year you're not going to choose to accept it, and blah, blah. That's why I was asking about this sort of like, what is the sunset and what is the policy on this? Because we're in kind of an odd spot. If the policy didn't have the caveat about temporary, would we even be here today? Or would the staff just have rejected it outright?
It would have been a different action item of, if you want to accept it, we would have to adjust our policy.
Okay.
So I think the point of that is that we're not asking you to change our energy risk management policy,
right,
that it falls within a short-term allocation. And I will say, I mean, one kind of counter to doing it longer than a year at a time is the energy market changes so drastically year to year. And so it's hard to predict, you know, it seems like worth considering because of where our net revenues are, but you know, say year 3 of the 5 years, it might not make sense at all for RCA to even consider that allocation. So if we were in we were receiving excess revenues, and you know, if the markets had shifted. So
but what we're hearing, I mean, if the allocation was only worth 50,000, we probably wouldn't even bought it. But because it's $500,000 for half a year, and then also in the other CCAs, they're considering the aggregated total amount, so 5 million, 4 million. I mean, so that's how they're probably viewing it, because they don't have this policy, right? So, and they're going to continue to do that, I would imagine, once they make that decision. It just kind of leaves, but I don't know if we're gonna lead the charge or just be sort of standing out in the cold. But just sort of on sort of the messaging.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Richard mentioned two CCAs that we know accepted it. There was another CCA we talked to that just their community is pro nuclear. It was no question. So it really does boil down to a community by community perception of nuclear.
Right.
And I think we have that very personal connection to nuclear, obviously, and a lot of
I
feelings
myself
and
have been
resentment.
arrested at protests related to this subject, so put me down. I've been. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll jump in because I haven't really talked yet. So, it just obviously it seems almost kind of like another situation where we're being strong armed by the PG&E and the IOUs and the CPUC to kind of subsidize something that we were promised was going to go away and had a whole plan for it and everything. And then now, you know, we're seeing this come back to us. And so, I came into this meeting actually more probably of the camp of like, yeah, but we're gonna save some money. That sounds good, right? And when you're looking at running a $9.4 million deficit, $500,000 actually doesn't really seem like that much, and it almost doesn't seem worth it to you know, go down this path and crack open this egg of nuclear power and thinking about it in the sense of continuing incentives for mining plutonium and uranium and the waste generation that comes with it. And thinking of, you know, is this truly the clean carbon-free power that we want? And so I kind of just have the question because, I mean, if we do accept this, that it will improve our CEA's financial situation, but it won't necessarily help our ratepayers. And it won't necessarily bring any kind of relief to, you know, what people are already feeling here. And so, and just already thinking too, and that could go either direction with the volatility of the energy market, that, you know, $500,000 could make or break us, or, you know, it could really just be a drop in the bucket down the line when we see a total major shift in energy prices within the next, you know, year. And so I also have another question, which kind of just like makes me think of cause and effect. If other CCAs are taking this allocation and they're following kind of similar things that we're thinking of, are they going to be selling off then their clean power at a rate that then makes it more affordable for us to buy that and makes it more available on the market? And then again, changes the whole market. I mean, is that like a possibility? Is that how? Real?
I would think that there's small enough allocations that we're not gonna see that impact the cost too much, but my crystal ball is cloudy.
Yeah. And then I still really am hung up on this, you know, fact that it does seem like PG&E and the other IOUs are, you know, subsidizing this power from Diablo Canyon, and it's going to exist on our bills to our ratepayers anyway. And so why don't we just own up and say, yeah, it's there, and, you know, we're purchasing it and it's going out into our grid. And so that might not have helped anybody make any decisions, but that's what I'm at right now. So.
Okay. So, yeah, normally I'm the guy who's gonna try to save some money and get some budgetary relief. But on this issue, I think I'm with Scott on it. And I also worry about RCEA in that it seems to start to erode or dilute some of our mission. Right, and one thing we didn't kind of talk about is like, yeah, it's $500,000 on that side. But as you start to erode the mission, you start losing CCA customers too. And so I'm not so sure it's a good idea. You know, of course, I'm not for nuclear power in any way, shape, or form, but this is doesn't seem like it to me.
Yeah,
maybe just one more thing. It's great discussion. I appreciate all the thought that's going into this. You know, it boils down to what we're always talking about. It seems like is like the IOUs, like you just said, Sarah, kind of dictating how we generate, how we power our lives, and the free market, unfortunately, it's been put in charge of helping us repower how we're going to live in the future, right? And it's not going to work. And that's why we're here today talking about really a small amount of money and savings that is not going to make or break us. But what does it mean to the community, our society? It means a lot, you know, it's not free. And that's the bottom line. This is not free if you think of the future. And if we don't think of, we need to be thinking about that when we're trying to transform society and how we live, how we power everything with, computers. We got to think about that. That's what climate change is about, right? We got 5 years to transform society, and we're being told that this is going to be a part of it, Diablo. And I just happened to watch 2 nights ago, by chance, unrelated, the Daiichi plant explode. And the whole story behind that, it's insane that we're boiling water with nuclear fission. It's insanity. And yet we're still doing it. It's just not worth it. But I respect when people think about the financial health of RCEA, but I don't think this helps us. We need to be focused on power and how market spikes, volatility. That should be our focus. Is figuring that out, talking to our legislators, like help us weather this nonsense that we've been put into. We got to work on that, and that's what I'm going to do. Let's focus on that.
Yeah. Wow. Michelle's on Zoom. If you want to hop in, if you have anything to add to the discussion, please. Sorry, I forget about Zoom sometimes.
That's okay. Thank you. I really appreciate the thoughtful discussion. This is, I think, the second time Sherry has asked me to attend as an alternate. So I really fall back on, the policy and why it's there, and am not swayed, because it's just a little bit, or because they're offering it, because we can do it short term. To me, it's not worth it. And I look at the policy as good policy that was set for RCA to set us apart and move in a different direction. So that's my thoughts on this.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, and what Jason said as well, really resonates with me, especially when because looking at these scenarios originally, I kind of was more of the vein of, if we do accept it, then we should be accepting it to reduce our GHG emissions, because we have recently taken a step back from our original policies, and to kind of reaffirm that. But if it sounds like more folks in here are either of the 1 or the 2 to scenario 2 to save us money, and not even that scenario 3. So really in that case, then I'm of the vein that I feel like this is a place for advocacy, and it is also a place for sticking to what we've tried to establish as policy for RCA and have tried to stick to. And obviously, volatility in markets and our budget and things have impacted that, and just availability of resources have impacted that. But I think if we have the opportunity to really take a look and say, is this the kind of power we want? Is this the clean power that we want? Is it truly clean? What's actually happening here? I'm getting there.
Good question.
Yeah.
This is something that you said about, and I made this really a question for staff in terms of the bill that a customer receives is going to pay for this anyway, right? So we're asking our customers to pay for something, and to pay for us to make this statement. Really,
well, every customer in the state of California is paying for this, regardless of who they're getting their electricity from. And one of the comments on there, I believe is correct, that it's not going to be a separate line item. It'll be it within the public purpose charge. So the customer will not see on their bill Diablo Canyon, but it is going to be incorporated in every customer's bill. I don't quite understand the question about where we're making them pay for the decision. I think irregardless of our decision, it doesn't change what's under.
Well, unless we choose to embed that back in savings. of the customer.
Yeah, and I don't know, I don't have off the top of my head what that would mean for customer savings and whether or not it would even be comparable to the charge that they're getting.
But I was gonna ask that, so I was wondering, do we have an idea as to what that cost is versus the savings?
I don't have it in my head.
It's like $70 or $80 million a year, I think, in customer revenues that we collect.
Right.
So if you're trying to think of having 500,000 sales to that.
Well, I'm wondering what is in the bill, so if you take that $500,000 and divide it across everybody, then is it comparable to what the increase in the bill is that?
Yeah.
Is it even?
$10 savings per customer,
Mhm.
like very basic math, maybe like $20 for one, and then like $1.
I see Lori has her calculator out, so.
Yeah, if we have 58,000 customers, is that about right? 58,000.
Yeah.
So basic math is $8.06. We
For
don't
the
know,
year.
we don't know what the cost. We don't know what the cost is.
Yeah, so
But we don't know what the cost on the bill,
Well,
the
some-
not
someone
line
knows,
item on the bill would be.
What they're already paying.
We don't have an estimate for that.
I know.
yeah, you don't know. And it's gonna be based on usage or is it a flat?
Based on fuel costs and cost of
Yeah.
operating the plant, all kinds
Yeah.
of things go into that.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna say, what I can count votes here, and it looks like that, well, I think that the message is real. I mean, I'm not gonna deny that. And so from my perspective, if the board is needed, count it, right? If this is.
But again, with CCD, if we get weird there, you have the most votes.
I do, but even then, I don't think that rate is enough. And so, so for me, if that's the way the board's gonna go, then I would advance that the board, if we're gonna make a statement as much unanimity as possible. Because that's the point of, I mean, I'm just saying, so I'm happy to do that, because for me, it's like, I came in this room like really thinking either way. I wanna have a robust discussion about that. I am very concerned about budgets these days, and again, deep in it with an organization that's having some issues in another organization as well, and I'm just and so I'm really very wary of decisions where we have these and then even thinking about, again, aggregated, we imagine this is just a $500,000 decision today, but if you choose to keep doing that and it becomes $5 million, that could be a really significant hit. So it's not insignificant. I think that's real for an organization of this size. Be taken seriously. That's right.
If this is not X, then we're gonna come back in the
I guess it would be nice to get board direction if you want to make a statement that you don't ever want to make a, decision on this again. But I think based on what I was saying before, I think we would, depending on our budget, to Director Wilson's point, if our budget doesn't get better and this could help, we'll bring it back for a decision.
But nothing says we can.
No, every year we get the same choice.
Yes, so
Can I make a motion? Motion to not accept the nuclear allocation.
we have a motion from Director Bauer. Have a second.
I'll second.
No, water district's non-voting, so.
Thank you.
And no, I would second it, but that's, just, it's not gonna pass in that way, okay? We don't have a second, do we have a different motion?
I would like to make a motion that we accept it and we dedicate those savings to actually building development.
We have a motion.
Would you be open to that motion, that using whatever we receive and a decision on that down the road, say in December or January?
I don't understand.
So I had a similar thought. I think you're asking if accept the allocation, but have staff bring back a board decision on how to utilize the funds that are saved at a different board meeting.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what that sounds like.
I liked what Director Wilson had to say about using some of that money to support the individual health. So I think that would be another really great discussion to have as to how to spend the money.
Okay. I have a question for staff, but it's not really additional funds, it just reduces our deficit, correct? So we would be spending that much general fund monies for that. All it does is just reduce our deficit a little bit, but if we take it, turn around and spend it, then our deficit goes back to where it is.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and whether or not,
I fully understand. Yeah. It's just trying to do good with something that we don't love. That's what I'm trying to do, is that I'm just trying to take this not so wonderful piece of our reality and turn it into something better. My little Pollyanna attempt at, moving forward a little baby step at a time.
Well, and I think, that is already to some extent what we are using, our funding to do. And that just, decreasing our overall deficit supports those programs that we're already working on, but.
It potentially helps some of our programs. We've talked in the past about wanting to do more to encourage solar. Giving clean is a dirty business. And I think we're just starting to see some of the difficulties there. But given the motion, if you would accept that the decision down the road a few months, I would second.
I would certainly accept that, yes.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, if this board chooses to accept the allocation, there's a time frame on that, right? Because it's temporary. How long is that?
It's for the calendar year 2025.
So in January, this would be back to this board once more.
No, sorry.
6.5, I'm sorry.
So the allocation would be for calendar year 2025. We would be back fall of 2025 for 2026's allocation.
I was getting confused because what I was hearing was just only for half a year.
No, it's
half the energy.
no. There's 2 units. One is
Right. It's one of the 2 units, so it's half the allocation. I see. And then the second unit comes on.
in September.
That's when that happens.
We have a motion and a second on the table. So
Ready to do a vote?
we will do a roll call vote.
Clarify, this is a motion to accept the nuclear allocation for calendar year 2025 and direct staff to bring back uses for the savings at a later meeting.
Yes.
And then it would. I want
Can we just,
clarify.
yeah, CCD voting clarification here. I don't know.
There would be 5 positive votes, for CC members necessary in order to pass this. So basically, all the members here, with the exception of Director Ramos, would need to, be in favor of this. That's in addition to the way I vote.
Yeah, we're gonna vote.
Okay, I just want, before we take that vote, I mean, I wanna say, like, if this isn't gonna pass, which is not going to. Then I'm definitely gonna push us, I'm gonna vote no, because I want, if we're gonna go through trouble making these statements, I would like to be as strong as possible, so.
Yeah.
That's good.
I agree.
Okay,
But
let's take it back. Okay, thank you, Lori.
Director Michelson.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Bauer,
Yeah.
Director Jorgensen,
yes,
Director Myers is absent, Director Ramos is non-voting, Director Stefani.
Yes.
Chair Schaefer.
No.
Director Tuttle is absent, Director Frank Wilson is absent, and Director Fuller is non-voting. Motion does not pass.
All right. So then, I mean, yeah, do we need a second motion? Or do you guys get that we're going with scenario 2 then? I mean. 1.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean,
guess
if it just doesn't,
is no action.
the action,
Is a no allocation.
yeah. Okay. Does the staff have what they need?
I mean. Would you like to have us bring back policy platform updates related to nuclear energy?
Yes, because it really sounds like we are moving at this from an advocacy point of view, and it would be nice to, maybe have some sort of letter drafted to explain why we are not taking this application and, send that to the CPUC and all related entities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that'll take us to the new business, unless folks need to take a break or anything, or should we keep moving? Let's keep moving. Okay, so that's the end of CCE business, and that'll take us to new business item 9.1, which is the Rural Regional Energy Network North Administrative Actions, Rural Ren, Man-Side Management. We got Stephen Coleman and Eileen Redwood to report. Stephen.
Thank you. Stephen Coleman, Director of Demand-Side Management. And I'm gonna report on some good news. Hopefully some the public might want to stick around to hear this.
Great things we're doing.
Exactly, yes. So a lot of you are familiar with the ongoing saga of what we've been calling the Rural Ren. This is the next chapter in this. If not, I'll touch base on it briefly, but I realize it's getting late, so I'll try and keep my report kind of brief. So I'll jump right to the punchline. Earlier today, the CPUC met and voted unanimously in favor to approve the split between what is now being called the Northern California Rural Ren and the Central California Rural Ren. And so, RCA will be the portfolio administrator for the Northern California group, which includes ourselves, the Sierra Business Council, Lake Area Planning Council, and the Mendocino Council of Governments. We will have a budget of approximately $33 million going through 2027 to implement 7 programs in those regions. We're still developing that and the split between the budgets. And so I did do a timeline that is the original staff report that was removed, but I was just looking at it again and just reminded of the saga. So RCA submitted the motion to form the rural REN March 4th, 2022. That was approved. It was delayed by the CPUC, but it was approved in July of 2023. And so we've been on this for about 2.5 years, trying to get through to the point that we're at now. So we're very excited about that. Quick reminder of the 7 programs that we'll be developing are both residential and commercial, what are called resource acquisition programs. So those are the rebates and the installations of energy efficiency equipment. There'll also be an equity program for residential and public customers, the codes and standards program to help jurisdiction and contractors meet existing codes and where appropriate, also look at breach codes, and a finance program to help with the finance of energy efficiency projects and workforce education and training. And so what we're looking for today are 2 items. One, in order to implement this and act as the administrator, we want to bring on a administrative consultant. And so under the authority that was given to us way back when we were going through this in the first round to submit RFPs for an administrator consultant, we put out an RFP for administrator consultant. We only received 1 response, but fortunately it was a very qualified response from Frontier Energy. Their response was fully compliant and for an amount that would be within our budget that's budgeted for administration. And so, how much should I go through all, because there's a couple of different action items. Should I just stop with that one or go through all?
No, let's go through the 2 that are in 9.1, yeah.
Okay, and again, I'm happy to answer any questions about their response and the contract, but in the sense of keeping it short, we've worked with Frontier Energy in the past. They've always provided really exceptional service. They work with many other RENs that are most experienced in this sort of work. And so we're very happy with their proposal. And then the other items are termination of previous rural REN memorandums of understanding. And so with the first go round, we had developed an MOU with all 7 of the original partners back in May 13th of 2021. We're working currently on a new MOA. We're changing it slightly to a memorandum of agreement, this time with our current partners. And so to move forward, we would need to terminate the existing MOU. And our legal counsel has reached out to the legal counsel of the other partners, and they would be agreeable to terminating that old existing MOU with a termination document. Furthermore, we had also executed an MOU jointly with Lake APC and MCOG because they would have been implementing programs underneath us. Now with the new agreement, they would be full members of the REN. So that is also no longer necessary with the new MOU coming up. So we'd be looking for authority to terminate that MOU as well. And both those organizations are fully in agreement that that MOU needs to be terminated to move forward. So the recommended actions are to award the contract with Frontier Energy for Rural REN North. When I wrote this, it was called Rural REN North. CPUC changed their name once again to Northern California Rural REN administrative services for a term of 2024 through 2027, a not to exceed amount of $1,200,265, and authorize the interim executive director to execute all applicable documents subject to RCA general counsel review. And the second item would be to authorize the interim executive director to execute all documents to terminate the original rural rent agreements subject to RCA general counsel review.
I just want to add one thing. The CPUC's decision today allows us to recoup costs as of yesterday. So this would be cost neutral. This contract, it would be paid for through rural rent funds.
All right. Thank you, folks. Any questions for Sue?
No, just, I mean, thank you for getting this organization through all of that.
It's been a long haul, yeah.
That I'm not gonna talk about. And even as an alternate, and having seen this at the state level. Yeah.
It's been a journey, and you know, I did not do it alone, and I know you know that. Eileen has been a rock through this, and I can't say enough about Patricia Terry, who's the portfolio.
And I want to say, I really actually think you're gonna have a stronger organization with the members who we have now. And I do think that geography matters in this case, and those are some strong partners. So, and creative people and the organizations, so I think it's, even after all that, it's gonna work out well.
Yeah, it took a long journey to get to this point, but I think we're in a much stronger, better place to implement programs for customers.
Yeah.
Okay, I will open up to public comment. Do we have anybody here? Nope, we don't have anybody here. Do we have one too? Okay. Then I will open it up for motion on 9.1 here. We have somebody.
I'll do it. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'll move we award the contract and the Ridge.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have a motion for the staff recommendation here and a second. We will do a roll call vote. Mayor Director Wilson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Bauer.
Aye.
Director Jorgensen. Aye. Director Lucy Myers are absent. Director Ramos.
Aye.
Director Stefani. Yes. Chair Schaefer. Yes. Directors Tuttle and Wilson are absent. Director Fuller.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. I probably should have added, Eileen might add that we'll be coming back at a later meeting with budget adjustments with the full ramification of what these budgets will make.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to item 9.2. So addition and reclassification of staff positions. Eileen.
Yeah, so end on a positive note, we've been awarded Department of Energy funds for the Terrace project as an administrator and the EP funds as well. And we've been actively engaging with the Department of Energy on contract negotiations and meeting with our tribal partners. In the grant or funding agreement, we had estimated one full-time project analyst, which is a new position to our CEA. We are asking the board to go ahead and authorize us to recruit for that position to help with team capacity. This is a very large and complex project, and we're still actively looking for funding to fill some gaps. We're confident that we will do that, but we're realizing that to better support our project partners, we need to build up our capacity. In addition, piggybacking on the last agenda item with rural REN's approval, we would like to go ahead and unfreeze 2 positions that we froze during the budget approval related to rural REN. Once we began looking at more of the programs we're offering and our existing staff capacity, we realized we had proposed a manager and a coordinator position, and we feel like it's a more accurate reflection to reclassify those on the org chart, the technician and coordinator. Those are two vacant positions, so we're not impacting any current staffing by that reclassification, but we feel like it better serves the needs that we have moving forward. And then lastly, unrelated to the terrace in rural Ren, but as we've been looking at positions, we identified that there is one position in power resources. It's a power resource specialist, and that the duties that that position actually performs now is much more aligned with the analyst position. And that analyst position was newly created in late 2023. And so in hiring a analyst for rural Ren, we realized that those job duties really overlap, and it made much more sense to reclassify one of the power resource specialists to analyst to be more in line with what they're working on. And so with those additions and reclassifications, what that does to the annual budget is about a $44,000 increase. The rural Ren positions will be cost neutral. They'll be covered through rural Ren. The terrace position will be covered through external funding. However, we'll have about a month before the contract is executed. So, you know, we would be funding that 1 month. And then the power resources program is funded through CCE funds for the program that they support. And so, and we're bringing the org chart to you to approve the changes, and what was included in the attachment in the packet shows we still have 2 positions frozen that we're not filling at this time. When we bring back the full budget for mid-year review, you know, we'll readdress whether or not there are funds to unfreeze those. And again, we'll be bringing back a budget adjustment that accounts for the revenue coming in for terrace and rural Ren and the associated expenditures once we get a little more detail.
Thank you, Eileen. Let's just open it right up for public comment. On Zoom, great. I'm gonna close public comment. Any questions, comments from staff, or we will entertain, not staff, the board, and we will entertain a motion as well.
I'll move that we approve staff recommendations 1 to 5.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Last roll call vote.
Yes, so Rich Wilson.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Bauer.
Aye.
Director Jorgensen.
Yes.
Director Steve. Mobley and Myers are absent. Director Ramos.
Abstain.
Director Scafani.
Yes.
Director Chair Schaefer.
Yes.
Director Tuttle and Wilson are absent. Director Fuller.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right. Reports.
I'll be brief. Richard had mentioned that Foster Avenue Solar was approved by Planning Commission, but I actually think it was the North Coast Highway Solar off of Highway 36.
Yes.
And so I wanted to clarify that we're really excited about the Planning Commission approving that project and it moving forward. Earlier today, you approved delaying some of the damages to make sure that we make sure that that project is successful. But to Richard's point on Foster, they have begun work on that site. So we've had many delays and we're really excited to see the work actually starting. Richard joked that solar has already been installed and it's because they put a solar powered light for security. So we'll take any win we can get at this point for local projects. And then kind of more information to come. We are working with the developer for Sandrini. They want to do a ribbon cutting. We've been working on this for so many years that we plan on sending a few staff, and we want to open up to see if there are any board members who want to attend with us. We don't have a date. When it gets closer, we'll reach out, but we want to show, yeah, it is worth the trip to Kern County for that ribbon cutting. So more information to come on that. It likely will be either in November or early in 2025 after the.
Exciting. Okay, thank you, Eileen. All right, any future agenda items? Any?
Yeah, maybe this is more just stuff to think about. Is there something we can do to look at what are the mechanisms that within our control? Or how do we get a greater span of control on the volatility of pricing? And something we can recommend to CPUC, legislature, like price controls, we just are getting hammered by it, and it has to do with our survival as an organization and all the other seasons, all of them.
Yeah.
So it's just to explore it. I don't know.
And I should have added that in my report out. I'm attending a KLCCA board meeting in San Francisco next week. And one of the items we're going to be discussing is reopening the PCIA, the power charge difference adjustment item in 2025. And there's a big swing coming, we think, in the PCIA and in the negative for CCAs. And so there will be an update on how we can advocate to get a little bit more control of that volatility.
Can you report back?
Yeah.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are going to go into closed session. Item 12.1, public employment pursuant to government code, section 54957, executive director recruitment. Is there any public comment on Zoom? Excellent. We are going into closed session.
Thank you.
Starting it now.
Pick a good one. No.
We're back, the mics are on.
Okay, we're back and there's nothing to report. And with that, we are adjourned.